married a human, not a mirror. Yeah? All right, let's talk about one of the biggest relationship mistakes that couples make. Expecting their partner to think, feel, and react and communicate exactly the same way that they do. In other words, expecting to marry a mirror. And when your partner doesn't respond the way that you would, you assume that something's wrong. He doesn't care. She's overreacting. He's emotionally unavailable. She's just too sensitive. But here's the truth. Most of the time, nobody's broken. They're just different. And understanding that difference is one of the most powerful things that you can do to protect your relationship. Now, before anyone jumps into the comments ready for battle, this isn't about saying, all men are one way and all women are another, although we are different. People are individuals. But decades and decades of psychological research does show some consistent patterns in, how many men and women tend to approach communication, how they approach emotion, and definitely problem solving. And if you don't understand those patterns, you can end up accidentally frustrating each other for years and years. Let me give you a classic example. A woman comes home after work and she's had a really rough day, and she starts talking about something that happened at work. Her partner listens for maybe a minute, and then they say something like, well, why don't you just tell your boss that you won't take on the extra work? And suddenly she becomes annoyed. Not because the advice is wrong, but because that wasn't what she was looking for. You can hear men going, what? For many women, talking about a problem is a way of processing emotion and actually building connection. She's not necessarily asking for a solution, which is where the male brain tends to go. She's asking for understanding. So something like, oh, that really sounds frustrating. I can see why that upsets you. That's empathy. That's connection for her. She's feeling heard. But many men tend to approach problems differently. From a young age, men are often socialized to see problems as things to solve. So when they hear about an issue, their brain just immediately goes into solution mode. So what's the fix? And this is where they offer advice. They often think that, they're being helpful. But to the person sharing the problem, it can feel like they're being dismissed. Now let's flip that situation. A man shares a problem that he's dealing with. Maybe, again, something at work, or maybe something financial. And suddenly, he's being offered lots and lots of emotional support and suggestions. Oh, how do you feel about that? Oh, maybe you should talk to someone. You should try doing this. And then he starts to feel a little irritated. Why? Because sometimes men experience advice or emotional analysis as criticism. Women are now going, what? Like someone is implying that they can't handle the situation themselves. So now both people are frustrated. One person wanted empathy, the other person offered solutions, and neither one is happy, but neither one meant harm. They were just speaking different emotional languages. Now, this is where a lot of couples actually get stuck. Instead of recognizing the difference, they try to change each other. You need to communicate more. You need to stop being so emotional. You need to stop overthinking everything. You need to be more emotional. You need to toughen up. But trying to turn your partner into a copy of yourself, that rarely works. Remember, you didn't marry a mirror. You married a different human being. And that difference is actually one of the things that can really make a relationship strong. Because when two people think differently and they work together, they bring different strengths to the relationship. One might be more emotionally intuitive, normally the woman. The other might be more solution focused, generally the man. One might prioritize connection, the other might prioritize action. When those differences work together, couples become incredibly effective teams, which should be your goal. But when those differences become battlegrounds, couples start feeling misunderstood. Now, let's talk about conflict, because here's another myth. Conflict in relationships is bad. Actually, conflict is inevitable. Two very different people sharing a life together are going to disagree. That is normal. The real issue isn't whether couples fight, it's how they actually handle that fight. Healthy couples treat conflict as information. They're curious about it. Why did that upset you? What did you need in that moment? Instead of assuming bad intentions, because most of the time the argument isn't actually about the surface issue. It's about feeling unheard, it's about feeling unappreciated and misunderstood. And once couples understand each other's emotional language, oh my God, conflict becomes a hell of a lot more easier to navigate. A man might actually learn that sometimes his partner doesn't need solutions. She needs presence. A woman might learn that sometimes her partner isn't being emotionally distant, I should say. He's simply processing internally before responding. And when both people start recognizing those patterns, oh boy, something really interesting happens. The frustration decreases and the empathy increases. And suddenly those differences that used to, create friction, create arguments, they start creating balance. Let's be real for a second. Relationships don't thrive because two people are identical. They thrive because two people learn how to work with each other and each other's differences, instead of fighting them. So if you've ever looked at your partner and thought, oh, why don't they think the way I do? The better question to ask yourself might be, what can I learn from how they think? Because that shift in perspective can change absolutely everything. If you want practical ways to work with those differences, and, instead of constantly fighting about them, that's exactly what I teach you. And you can find so many more tools and guides and relationship insights on my website, kgbincorporated.com. Lots of free guides over there for whatever you're dealing with. And if you enjoyed this conversation, then please make sure that you do follow, because I talk about all the things: sex, relationships, long-term connection, the real stuff that happens that people generally sweep under the carpet. What happens after 40, after 50, with kids and chaos and mismatched libidos and menopause. Because great relationships aren't built by finding someone exactly like you. They're built by learning how to love someone different from you. I'm KGB, real talk, raw truths, and relationship truth bombs.